Happy Wednesday, everybody. We are back for another week of hot discussions about what is happening in the housing market and how this information is going to affect you if you're planning for retirement or you are already retired. As usual, I have quite a few things to share with you, and I'm going to post some questions to you so that way we can have a really lovely discussion. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what we're seeing is retirees are running away from Florida. What is going on? And that is the first article that I want to talk to you about. So I'm going to share it, and we're going to take a look, and I would love to hear your opinion about this as well. So here we go. Okay. So this is recent from Go Banking Rates. Is the Florida's retirees are fleeing, and experts predict that these 5 states are actually going to be the top retirement spots in 10 years. As you guys know, in majority of the research and for quite some time, Florida is considered the #1 retirement spot in the United States for many reasons, because of the weather, because of no state income. A lot of it does have to do with weather and for beaches and other opportunities. So here's what we have from this article. As major Florida cities like Miami continue to grapple with the ever-increased cost of living expenses, some retirees may question if it's in their best financial interest to retire in Florida. This is especially true of individuals planning to retire in the next 10 years. And you know what? That is exactly what we have been seeing with regards to the cost of living in Florida. Things have changed since COVID, because a lot of people that were well-to-do, who were able to have a remote job, decided that they were going to head south because of the weather and because of the flexibility. And you know what happens? Florida is a small state. It is not the size of Texas. You can only fit so many people, and the cost of living has gone up because of the population increase. So the best state to retire in does depend on your unique financial circumstances and the needs. However, key considerations like the cost of living, taxes, housing expenses, and overall quality of life all matter to retirees. I actually have done a video on the best states to retire this year, where we talked about how the research is done, and you can actually you can use the spreadsheet that is provided to sort depending on what is important to you. So if you are thinking about retiring and you are looking at different factors, decide on what are the top 5 things that are most important to you. It could be cost of living, it could be access to health care, it could be something like people like to live not too far from water, whether it's lakes or beaches. So decide on what those things are, and I'm going to link this video under this one so that way you can refer back to it, because we talked about it quite extensively as well. So if Florida isn't on the table for retirement, those retiring in the next decade may consider the following 5 states as the next up and running retirement hotspots. So what are they? The first one that we have listed here is Texas. We know Texas, already anticipated by experts to be a popular 2025 retirement destination, would receive an automatic inclusion in this roundup. The Lone Star State is already popular with residents for not taxing Social Security or having any individual income taxes. So besides that, the data revealed that at least 10 Texas cities are considered hidden gems for retirees. Frisco, El Paso, and Plano all received mentions thanks to low monthly expenditures and crime rates. And too, I had clients that recently, I helped them sell their house in my practice, and they relocated to the suburb of Houston called Spring, Texas, a few years back. Now they're back because I guess another job transition, but they absolutely loved living there. So they really liked, of course, it is hot and humid in Houston, but everything else was just amazing. So just another town potentially to consider. Next up on our list is New Hampshire. According to a study conducted by Empower, New Hampshire has been ranked as one of the best states to retire in 2024. While some benefits of retirement there may change between now and 2034, because we are talking about the 10 years, we think that it's safe to say the granite state's tax-friendly reputation will continue to be a big draw for retirees. Empower data revealed that the New Hampshire has the lowest tax burden at 5.06% out of any U.S. state. And even though there's a 5% tax imposed on investment income, the state of New Hampshire does not tax Social Security benefits. And you know what? Actually, today, I was doing some research for another client of mine, which, by the way, she lives in Texas. And we had a conversation with her a couple of days ago where she told me that they're having a hard time dealing with the heat in the summer. They like to walk, they like to hike, they want to be near water, but in the summertime, it's just getting to be too hot. So they are considering maybe going somewhere up north just for the summertime. And this is what the agent told me. We were looking at some things for them in the states of New Hampshire and Vermont. And she said that New Hampshire has advantages at no sales or income tax. So some things just to consider that are also a part of this list as well. The next one on the list is North Carolina. Previously, North Carolina was identified as an up-and-coming state that will be popular with retirees in 2025. So that's coming up next year. And one major reason why North Carolina is so attractive to retirees is housing costs. According to the U.S. News and World Report, several major cities, including Charlotte and Raleigh, have median mortgage and rent costs that don't exceed $1,500 a month. That is definitely a plus, because if you think about it, is if you have, as an example, two people and quite a big percentage of the population does rely on Social Security. And let's say if your average Social Security check for one person is $1,700, then one person can actually pay for housing, which typically for most people is the biggest expense piece of their pie. So Go Banking Rates also identified Raleigh as one of the hidden gem cities for retirees to check out if they're interested in retiring in the South. I probably should do a little bit more research because Raleigh is popping up quite a bit lately. So if you live there, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on your area. Arkansas is quickly positioning itself as one of the best states to retire if you are in the fixed income. In June 2024, the website included Arkansas among the top states to retire to if you are seeking out places where your retirement will cost under $50,000 a year. The data indicated that Arkansas's total annual cost of living is about $43,800, and this comes out to be about $3,600 a month, with retirees paying $547 in healthcare and about $400 in grocery costs per month. That sounds to be very reasonable. And I think that you can consider the Midwest if you feel comfortable with being where you are. Iowa, original research was conducted by a life insurance agency, Choice Mutual, cited as Iowa as the best state for retirement in 2024 and very likely in the years to come. And several factors have pushed Iowa to the top of the list, including the state's outstanding healthcare system, low crime rates, affordable housing, and low cost of living expenses. All these factors do position Iowa as one of the best states to retire in because retirees can hold on to their retirement savings a little bit longer. As you can imagine, if you keep your expenses lower, your nest egg is going to last you longer as well. The attesting to the accuracy of these rankings, having included Iowa in the roundup of the best states to retire, retirees can anticipate spending about $400 in transportation costs, about $600 in healthcare expenses monthly, with the total cost of living coming out to about $3,900. Not bad, not bad. So that was one thing. So the question that I have for you guys, what do you think about these states? What about retiring to Florida? Is this still at top of your list? Or are you thinking now twice and checking with other people or maybe visiting? One of the things that I have talked about for quite a bit is when you're not sure, and remember, what we are looking at is opinions of other people. opinions of others are very different than what may make sense to you. So I always make a suggestion. If you are thinking about retiring to Florida, there's plenty of different areas that you can go visit. So you can go visit the Panhandle, different area. You have a Gulf of Mexico for your beaches. Then you also have Tampa, which is also the Gulf, but that's another popular spot. Tampa, Clearwater. Actually, Clearwater is one of my favorite beaches. Then you have Central Park, like Orlando, and also where the villages are, which is a very popular spot. It's huge. They probably, I think, encompass a few zip codes. And it's all about focusing on retirees living well and everything being provided for them. I'm actually working on having a YouTube live to be done with someone who is a villages expert. So that way we can get like a firsthand opinion, somebody who actually lives there, who is also retired, but also knows the real estate market really well. So stay tuned. That's actually being in the works. And then you also, of course, have the other side of the state heading across on, I don't know if it's Route 4, but heading in the direction of Jacksonville. That's not the area, right? Because now you're on the ocean side. And then, of course, you go down the coast, you have, things like Boca and Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, and of course you head down south into Miami and the Keys. So my suggestion to you is check out all of those areas. It may take you some time, and the best way to do it is to visit when it's the worst possible time to do it. Not when it's beautiful in the wintertime and the weather is so mild and everything is so lovely. No, you guys need to go and visit in the month of July when it's 100% humidity and 100 degrees outside and it's storming and not storming. That is when you need to decide if you can handle and tolerate the summer in Florida, which Floridians are actually considering their winter. So they actually hibernate in the summertime because it's impossible to be out in the middle of the day. So those are always my recommendations. You need to go in the worst possible season and stay there for more than a week, because sometimes you can't really get a feel for the place if you like it or not. Visit different communities, see what's happening in the local Facebook groups, visit senior centers. That is how you get a feel for if you like it or not. And you know what? It's very different. It's a very different state. And also another point that I was talking to somebody else about being in Florida is, how do you feel about decorating a palm tree for the holidays in December? So somebody said that there's no way, I just can't do that. It just doesn't work for me, putting a Santa hat on a palm tree. So I get it. It is what it is. So I want to hear your opinions about Florida, Texas, and some of the other states that I mentioned. Is it really, Florida may not be the best place to go anymore? I know I have quite a few clients that have sold their homes with me, with our team, and moved down to Florida, and some of them are thinking about coming back. I have a couple that lives around Boca, and they have a very nice waterfront property. They live like on a little small lake. But it is waterfront. And they told me that their homeowner's insurance is, I think, around $8,000 a year. $8,000, guys. It's something that you can't control. Even though if you shop every year, how much money can you really save? It could be a couple of dollars. And he is a pretty good tradesman that makes a decent living. And, we had a conversation last year. I actually flew out to see them, and they're like, we're thinking about coming back north because it just does not make sense. The expenses are outrageous. So the cost of living is increasing, and that is just something as a food for thought. So the next article that I want to share with you is just a little bit of an update about the housing market. So last week we talked about the fact that the Fed has dropped the rates by 0.5 point, and everybody got very excited, and I'm always being cautious, and I call it cautiously optimistic. And I asked my lenders today, I said, okay, guys, I'm going to be coming on tonight to talk about what's happening in the industry. What are you seeing? And here's what they told me. One gentleman told me that, markets lost some ground today and the rates are actually moving up slightly. The second gentleman told me that the rates are currently in high 5%, low 6%. So that's where we are. And one of my partners who is a reverse mortgage specialist, a really excellent gentleman. He told me that the rates that they have for adjustable rates for the reverse mortgages are about 6.5. So that's where things are sitting. And they are not super, they're not running around saying, let's jump on, let's go because of what happened with the rate. They're just saying, listen, we are still in a really good market position. Let's shop because the prices on homes are still creeping up in many areas. So, all right. So this is interesting article as well. So this is the one that just came out actually today that I thought that was interesting. And this is kind of in what it kind of coincides with the conversations that I'm having with a lot of our clients. It is not a great fall housing market, but according to one economist, it is as good as it is going to get. And this is some of the conversations that we're having is that we have a major election that is going to be happening in October, let's see, about what, a month or so, a little bit, right? And 5 weeks or so. And what I've seen in my years in the business, in the industry, especially when you have a major political election that is happening, things do kind of slow down a few months prior. And this is exactly where we are. And I am starting to feel it a little bit where we are, where in the month of August, things were very busy and things were hopping. And then the last 2 weeks, for some of the properties that we have for some of our sellers, it has been very slow, almost crickets. So it is understandable because we're back to school. School is in session. Everybody wanted to get settled just in time for the school. So I understand. Yet people are still out there shopping. We're just not seeing the big crowds in quite a few places. So let's see what this economist says. While housing affordability remains a challenge for many buyers in the U.S., for many buyers, conditions are somewhat improving due to lower mortgage rates. Buyers need to earn $115,000 to afford the typical in the U.S. Absolutely. That number is where I thought it was around 120, 125. And that's what Redfin is reporting. That is down 1% from a year ago and represents the first decline since 2020. Housing payments posted the biggest decline in 4 years. Redfin also found the median mortgage payment is about $2,500 during the 4 weeks ending September 15th, which is almost 3% down a year from a year ago. Interesting. And both declines stem from lower mortgage rates, said Daryl Fairweather, chief economist at Redfin. As of September 19th, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage is 6.909, down from 6.2 a week prior. And see how even a slightest change, they may not be a full percentage point, but even a little bit does make a difference. So rates did peak this year at 7.22% on May 2nd. And the only reason why mortgage payments are down is because of the rate effect. So here are some challenges that they're talking about. The typical household earns 27% less than what they need to afford a home, about $84,000 a year per Redfin data. And you know what, too? That is, again, something else that I mentioned to someone else today at a fair that I was at the senior community, was that the market, the increases in the pricing because of the multiple offers are growing at a much higher rate than a typical salary increase that you would see at the end of the year that people are getting. So it's very, very disproportionate, and it's hard to see and understand and explain logically for those potential buyers or sellers who are looking for hard data. A lot of this does not have a rhyme or reason or explanation. So home prices are still high. The median asking price for newly listed homes is $300,000, almost $400,000, which is up almost 5.5% from a year ago. While housing overall continues to be unaffordable for most buyers, this is as good as it gets, according to a senior economist at Zillow, as the market is generally seeing lower mortgage rates, more inventory, and low buyer competition. And here's what buyers can expect in the coming months, according to the Zillow economist. Mortgage rates will go by the way of the economy. Lower home loan rates will provide a great opportunity for buyers who have been waiting. Just because the Federal Reserve cut rates does not necessarily guarantee mortgage rates will continue to fall. That is true. And that's exactly what I mentioned when I'm checking in with my lenders on a daily basis to see what is happening. They said that they have not seen a big effect yet from the rate cut that took place last Wednesday. While mortgage rates are partially influenced by the Fed's policy, they're also tied to the Treasury yields and other economic data. Mortgage rates will go by the way of the economy. And if the economy shows the signs of weakening, the rates will come down. If we see the opposite, and that the economy is chugging along and employment gets stronger, it is quite possible that the rates may go up. So more homes are coming on the market. So on top of the lower mortgage rates, this is what this economist is predicting, a higher inventory of homes for sales makes the housing market more favorable for the buyers. Well, we're going to see. We're going to see. Just as I mentioned to you, probably on a weekly basis, I take this information very much with a grain of salt because it is very hard to generalize this information and say, well, the whole United States, millions of acres that it is all one and the same, because it's not. Every state is very, very different, and the market is different in every state. And this is why my strong suggestion to you is take this information and the news that you hear on the TV or social media, or you read an article about it. You take that information, you take it to your local real estate expert, and you ask them, hey, how does this national news affect us right here in our community? Because that is going to be more important, because as you know, real estate is number one is location. So there were 1.3 million homes for sale by the end of August, which is up to almost 1% from a month prior. And the inventory level was up 22.7% compared with August of last year. Okay. Meanwhile, the home builder confidence in the market for newly built single homes improved in September, according to the National Association of Home Builders. Its survey also shows that the share of builders cutting prices in September was 32%, down 1 point. It is the first decline since April, according to the NAHB. You know what I can tell you about the reason why new construction is important to follow is because typically it's one of the first indicators where there's changes in a housing market is where new builders slow down their building or they start offering extra incentives. I can tell you that in my area, I am getting notifications and text messages from the builders specifically for those communities that are 55 and plus because of my clients. I just had one text today that they just opened up a phase 2 and they're offering great benefits and they're buying down the rate for the potential buyers to help them and offering incentives. And that's telling me that the market is specifically for boomers because they may be looking specifically for 55 plus community, and perhaps they may want the new construction. It is starting to soften up where we have some wiggle room, where we can ask for some things, additional things, maybe a finished basement and things like that. So I'm always keeping track and checking in with builders, that's for sure. Price growth will depend on the level of existing home inventory, and existing home inventory is expected to rise as the mortgage rates lock-in effect diminishes, placing some downward pressure on prices as well. Wait and you are trading one difficulty for another. The housing market is not going to get generally worse over the next 12 months. If house hunters are discouraged because they haven't found a home, they might have a better chance next year when there are more listings. And you know what I can tell you too? A lot of people say, I'm just going to wait till spring. Well, I wouldn't. I would be out now because if other people are waiting, that means you have less competition. And I tell you the same thing to the sellers. Sellers always ask me, when is the good time to put a home on the market? And my answer always is, when is the good time for you, the seller, because of whatever your plans are. Yes, we do keep an eye on the seasonal fluctuations, and we look at a 12 to 24 month report so you can see how prices fluctuate with the season, specifically in your area, in your neighborhood, in your school district, in your town. That is just something to be aware of and mindful. However, overall, I guarantee you with 100% certainty, there's people shopping every day of the year, including holidays, because housing is a need. It is the number one thing that we all need. We need shelter. If mortgage rates further decline next year, the number of homes for sale might grow. Most homeowners are sitting on loans with record low mortgage rates, create a so-called lock-in effect or a golden handcuff. Absolutely. That is the conversation that we've been having every week, where people are having a hard time giving up their 2.5%, 3.5% mortgage rates. It's very, very nice to know that you have them. And I can tell you that you will never see those rates again. So if you guys are sitting and waiting for rates to come down to that point, it's not going to happen. So don't even bother. We will probably see people who are buying or selling to buy again, said Fairweather, because high borrowing costs held them back. So this is the other article in terms of what is happening right now. And you know what, too? A lot of people are focused on the rates and how high they are. And here's what's happening in the elections coming up. And more conversations that I'm having with our clients and asking them, what's important to you? Why making a move and getting rid of and paying off that 3% mortgage may be a better move for you because of where you're going. Maybe your expenses are going to be less. It could be a home that you're going to be downsizing that you don't have to worry about any longer. There are numerous advantages in doing this and not worrying about the fact that you are losing out on the mortgage that's 3%. That is the conversation that we just need to have. All right, now the other interesting article, the last one, and then we're going to dive into some of the answers to my questions with regarding to Florida, because I already see them coming in, as this one that I have been talking for a bit in terms of figuring out on how do we work with figuring out what to do about the housing shortage. And this is something that we've talked a little bit about before, and this one is coming up again. So Forbes wrote about national ADU growth trend, a boon for boomers and baby chasers. So alternative dwell, trying to think, why do I always forget ADU? Accessory, I keep forgetting the word, accessory dwelling unit. So think of it this way. It is a home that you may have, like a little carriage house that you have in the back of your property. It could be a in-law suite that was added on or built on. It could even be, it doesn't have to be separate building. It can be a finished basement that has a little kitchenette. And it's specifically these types of living arrangements is what I really think is a big answer to the housing shortage and a big solution and a positive decision for a lot of the boomers. So in California, they have laxed the rules on a city level with regards to building these accessory dwelling units. And it resulted in a huge increase in permits and opportunities. And I do believe that there is some restrictions that you are this for a family member, because otherwise you're going to have investors building these units in the back, hoping to just rent them out. So let's see what this article has to say about these. And then we can talk a little bit more. One measure to alleviate our nation's excruciating housing shortage has been the legalization of accessory dwelling units, what we used to call a granny flat in many regions of the country. According to this center at the George Mason University, California and 13 other states have broadly legalized their construction to expand the lower cost housing options for their residents. And you know what, too? It could be one of those tiny houses that I love seeing where it's small enough, but it's just big enough for one or two people. Let's say you have a family member that is now a widow or a widower. having a tiny home where they have their privacy and they still have their own space, yet they're close enough for you to be able to take care of them, I think is just the most amazing way that you can give back and have a peace of mind that you're taking care of your loved ones. However, as you can imagine, it's only California and those 13 states, and the rest of the country, unfortunately, has not caught up yet. So that is good news for grannies in particular, as one of the most acute shortages in our country is facing is aging in place friendly homes for our growing population of older adults. And this is only going to get worse, as majority of the boomers are going to turn 65 by the time they turn 2030, which means we got 6 more years just before everybody's going to get to that retirement age, and then give it another 5 years or so, right? So we're looking at the next 10 years. It's going to get potentially pretty bad, is what I'm predicting. So with aging in place means is housing that it's safe and accessible for people who experience physical challenges as they age. And that's close to half of the Americans ages 65 and older, according to CDC. So AARP notes that households headed by this cohort are expected to grow from 34 million to 48 million in the next 20 years or so, and lists ADUs as the first of its wealth of housing options for older adults. These tiny housing units, often located behind a suburban home, proliferated in post-World War II America until zoning laws shut them down from the construction. Yes, you know what? It's not a federal level. It's not even a state level. It is something that if the local government just thinks this through and really does consider this, it is the changes that can be done with the zoning laws that are local according to the city. It is your local municipality, your little town, your little city, your little borough. This is where the power exists to make these changes, to change those zoning laws, to help out with this housing crisis, is what happens. So today, they are experiencing a bit of renaissance in U.S. communities with real benefits to older Americans, the group shared on the website in 2020 post. Another senior real estate specialist, like myself, sees the need and demand in the area for ADUs. So this lady is in the DC area. We have seen this gradually evolve over the years and now are seeing more and more earnest acceptance since around 2010s. Downsizing is a family decision for many, and including the option of ADU has become an excellent alternative to assisted living facilities. Have you guys looked at the cost of assisted facilities? And if you need more care, you're talking about some of the memory care homes. You're talking about $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. What percentage of the population is able to afford that? And that's the reality, because probably a good 65%, I believe, is the percentage of retirees, and those that are still saving up for their golden years just don't have enough savings to survive. And of course, to be able for them to last until they're 90. So having this little tiny home that sits on the same property as potentially your kids or some other loved ones, I think it's an amazing alternative. I just wish the local governments would really see how amazing of an opportunity this is. I really do. So what they're seeking is one level living with open space, abundance of windows, adding natural lights to help the senior have the comfort of an at-home feel, while also being able to incorporate accessible bathrooms and kitchens in need. Another great feature is outdoor space, giving these compact units a more special feel. So, baby chasers trend. Ryan White, who is a design director at a Irvine, California firm, is familiar with the housing deficit. His firm has designed the picket fence, which is a multi-generational concept home with the ADU recently completed in Pittsburgh. One big trend that they are seeing surrounds baby chasers. The term has been popularized to describe grandparents moving closer to their kids. Oh yes, got it. And grandparents typically are downsizing from a larger home and often moving into an ADU in order to be part of raising their grandkids and helping their own children afford a home in which to raise their family. An ADU is that perfect housing solution, according to the author. Many older and younger people cannot afford the cost of a new home. Living together allows family to share resources and is very cost effective. In one of my last videos, I talked about multi-generational housing and living with families. So it's not just a cultural belief and norm anymore. It is something that other people are considering as well. Kuhn sees additional benefits in this arrangements with multi-generational housing, allowing young people to have help with childcare and older people to get the help that they may need when they are physically challenged. The children have the ability, and they also have a peace of mind knowing that they can help their parents and they're close by. And the grandparents can also assist and pitch in with childcare, which, as you know, is extremely expensive. So to me, that's also a big win. They can also help each other in many other ways, taking care of the house when some of them travel, sharing meals together. And that's just also very important because I think a lot of the families have gotten away from that because of just how big the United States is and people moving in all different directions. Overcoming challenges. While zoning is becoming more accommodating to ADUs across the country and the multi-generational living they enable, creating this capability isn't necessarily easily achieved. White identified delivering livability with affordability as a challenge that was faced. Incorporating the ADUs was the answer that allowed us to create two very comfortable homes that align with the design principles that were established while not sacrificing how the homes live. And the second residence can function as a revenue generator or multi-generational facilitator as well. So the future, I would love to see more of them, as they're talking about exploding in popularity back in August of 2023 blog post. And let's see what happens. It doesn't surprise Coons, who found ADUs across the country, should develop her latest book and sees them as a great resource for addressing the housing shortage. Many people don't know about ADUs, but when they do, there's a strong interest to build them for themselves. In some cases, she observed the grandparents are moving into the bonus home, and others, it could be the adult children. In both instances, family closeness, security, and cost savings are enhanced. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And I'm curious, this design firm, I just want to see what they designed and what it looked like. Let me see. Picket fence. What is that? The picket fence concept, how completes. Let's see what this looks like. I'm gonna have to do some more research, but this is what they were showing. Let me see what it looks like. Picket fence. This is the concept they were just sharing. This is this picket fence concept is a skinny house. Actually, that's not what I was thinking that they did. That was like the idea in my head, but this is what they were showing. It's a 3-story urban townhome and accessory dwelling unit that they did in Pittsburgh. Interesting. Okay, so that was this was one other important article that I wanted to share with you, because this is something that has to be advocated for on a local level. You need to talk to your local politicians, your local boards, your local zoning, and explain to them about how this is going to become more and more prevalent. I think we'll see more and more of this as a challenge that is going to be brought up, and it has to be done on a local level in the next 5-7 years. I don't recommend waiting longer until when you actually need it. But if you have the land, why not be able to put something like a tiny home on there to care for your one loved one? I really do think it's actually amazing. I do. All right, so we have lots of comments that I want to share with you about people that are running away from Florida. So ZZY51 says, from what I have heard, Florida is quickly turning into another high cost of living state like California and New York, a place where only the wealthy can afford. What a shame. We talked about the cost of living. I'm seeing it more and more. I actually have asked a few of my clients to send me some of their bills. I'm curious. And if you look at the consumer price index, which I find very interesting because the housing is a big part of it, and that's where the inflation and all of those other economic indicators stem from. Insurance was on the list of the biggest increases that I have seen this year. So I am not surprised because I shop for my insurance every year, as much as I hate doing it. But every year I do set a reminder, and I do that, and I recommend that you guys do too. There's absolutely nothing that is holding you back to shop pretty much any time of the year and have other brokers shop the rates for you. And also just make sure to know that just because you're getting a better rate doesn't mean that you're having better coverage. So just because you're getting all excited because you save all this money, you also want to make sure that you have the appropriate coverage for your home. And that is also important to know. So ZZ, I agree with you. Cost of living is something else. From Wow, thank you for your comment. I bought a home to retire in and sold it a year later. Wow. Florida isn't what Florida was. Don't know where to go next, but not Florida. Explain the traffic, the cast iron pipes, the cost of insurance, if you can get it, cost of housing, the oppressive heat, the crazy BS all over, and more. I hear you. We were just talking about the cost of insurance, so I definitely feel your pain. Justin Case says, my dad moved to Florida. I hadn't been in the area in years, and I could not believe how built up it was when I visited. The traffic, ugh. And now with all of the political things that are happening, it's only worse. No thanks. I hear you. I hear you. Laco88 says, the worst weather I have experienced was in Florida. It was 95 with about 90% humidity. Exactly. If you guys love the heat, by all means, Florida is probably for you, but you have to really be able to be comfortable with it. So the weather, I think, is a hard one. Gold Light says, I live in PA near Philly, and it's already 90 degrees and humid for most of the summer. So why would I ever want to retire to Florida? Touche. I get it. I agree. It's almost the same type of weather. The only thing that PA does not have is the palm trees. But you know what? I don't know if I would want to move to Florida myself because you cannot find a shade under a palm tree. So you cannot park your car like you can in the Northeast and actually find the shade where you can get into your car and it's not the sauna of 150 degrees. So Betterment says, I'm staying in Virginia. Got it. Okay. G-Buzz says, 3 visits to my sister and my extended family in Tampa have convinced me that I never want to move to Florida. I have to confess that it was never high on my list because of the hurricane and all of that, but Tampa just totally turned me off. The traffic was horrible. The food was mediocre at best. Sorry if I offended someone. Maybe my family took me to the horrible restaurants. In my case, nothing in Tampa called out to me as a retirement destination. Got you. Artist Check 113, welcome. As a Mid-Atlantic retiree, I'm beginning to question my sanity for choosing to move to Southwest Florida. It's been a rough 2 years here, adjusting to the weather, bugs, scam artists, and the general in-your-face bullying. Oh, okay, so we're heading into some political things here. There are days, though, when I marvel at the sun setting behind the palm trees and the sunlight shimmering on the dark blue water of the Gulf Coast. I must add, though, that I am not alone. I have met others who are as turned off by the negativity as I am. We may be on the fool's errand, but we are going to give it another couple years, and see if we can affect some change for the better. If not, we will put our home on the market and head to Pittsburgh. It has better health care and values art diversity and doesn't have the peculiarities that we have encountered here. Good perspective. This is what I love hearing, that it's not always all negative, I hope, but there are some really good things as well. It can't be that bad. It can be. There's tons of people that are living there. VTN says, I love Florida. All right. Moved here in 2017 from California. So much less expensive. I think you can probably move into many, like majority of the states from California, and you're going to feel great because you reduced your expenses. So let me know if you agree with that. Great seafood, beautiful beaches, no income tax compared to LA or DC. The traffic is a joke. Okay. Worst bugs in my life were green-headed flies in Michigan, followed closely by gnats in DC. It's hot and humid in the summer, but you are on the beach or in the air conditioner during the afternoons. And in the winter, spring, and fall, when many are freezing up north, we're outside in the 60-degree weather. To each his own. 100%. I think a lot of people maybe are tolerating the springtime, the summertime in the heat, and they're just hibernating like we hibernate in the winter, and then they're enjoying the other 3 seasons. So to each his own is a good one. Thank you so much, VTN, for sharing. MMR95, thanks for being here. Grew up just north of San Antonio. Okay, so I think we are heading into the feedback about Texas. I would love to. I'm very curious. So just north of San Antonio in Cibolo. San Antonio, I believe, is really the southern point. You're like really in the South Texas. I currently live in north of Austin in Leander. I also have lived in Florida. I do love the beach in Florida, and at times I am tempted to go back and retire there. But Central Texas has a lot going for it. We don't get the weather extremes of Dallas or the humidity hurricanes of Houston. Yes, it gets hot here, but for me, the only really unbearable, unbearable time is usually July and August. It's a great time for vacation to cooler climate. Some years are worse than others, but thankfully we have AC, but it will run up the electric bill in the summer. Winter is usually pretty mild, but we do get below freezing occasionally, and sometimes we will get an Arctic blast that will drop it into teens. You also have to deal with the ice storm every few years or so. I will shut the city down. That will shut it down for a day or 2 usually. Okay. The people overall are friendlier in Texas than Florida. At least that's been my experience. If you suffer from allergies, then Central Texas may not be for you. We have what they call cedar fever. Interesting. From all of the cedar pollen in the winter, but it's only really bad for about 6 weeks. Some people are affected worse than others, so maybe come visit in the winter, which is December, January, and see if it affects you. Doesn't really bother me that much. Okay, interesting. We don't have income tax, but we do have sales and property taxes. And property taxes are where they get you, so you need to price that in. Property taxes are based on appraised value, but that is limited to 10% increase per year. There are some protections for 65 plus, like a tax ceiling and additional $10,000 homestead exemption. So just make sure you understand the tax implications for any home that you plan to purchase, and all that information is public. I love that. And you know what? This is what I also talk about with people too. They say, well, I'm going to go to Florida, I'm going to go to Texas, and they think that the main reason is because there is no income tax. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is no income tax, the government is going to figure out another way of collecting taxes. They just do it in different ways in Florida. And as you can see from this gentleman's comment, they do it through property taxes and some other ways. So it's important to consider the bigger picture of how everything is affected and create that budget sheet. I talk about it all the time. 1 Hour Pizza says, Houstonian since 1975. Welcome. And I concur with the assessment of Texas. Have AC, will travel, as long as one can tolerate the political BS, the heat, the property tax, the thought of free roaming guns, and the hurricanes. If you live near the coast, it is good living in Texas. People seem friendlier, especially West Texas. The roads are wide. If you miss traffic, we got them for you. Food is great with plenty of it, and there are a lot of varieties. If you want to immerse in different cultures, then you will be in the melting pot of the world. It may be the armpits of the world, but the food is damn good. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. You know what, too? I really do think that there is no perfect state. There is no perfect state. You can come up with the things that are most important to you and see which ones are the most important to you, but you're still going to have the negatives. I don't know if there's any state where flies and bugs don't exist. Can you tell me where it is? Because I would love that, because I can tolerate rodents, but I just don't do bugs. So I've seen the bugs in Texas because I unfortunately do travel to Texas on a regular basis in August. I am in Austin, Texas for conference every August. And oh my God, it's hot. But you know what? It's also a dry heat. It's very different. If it was the same heat of 100 degrees and humidity, it would be completely insane. Law Shaw 15 says, having lived in Texas, I can say that I would consider returning there if the circumstances were right. I enjoy hill country quite a bit, and I liked Fredericksburg, although that might be. So by the way, Fredericksburg is on my towns to visit because I believe it looks very much like a European town. I want to say German, but I'm not 100%. But it's very, very interesting, and it has lots of things to see. So thank you for bringing that up. You know what? Next year when I'm in Texas, in the summertime, unfortunately, I'm going to take a drive over to Fredericksburg because it's been on my list for a bit. So farther north than you were thinking. Spent a long weekend along the Guadalupe River in B&Bs and loved that area. In the days before digital cameras, I shot a whole roll of film following a docile deer in the woods, only to turn around and see the rest of the herd following me. Also, Sonora, Texas has caves that were fun to explore. Don't get me started on Texas cuisine. Tex-Mex is the superior Mexican food, and the mole sauce in Texas is to die for. Haven't tried that. I'm going to have to, though. Portion size in Texas is super size. Roadside burger joints are often fantastic. I left Texas because I missed having 4 seasons. There you go. For some people, you know what? That is a necessity. I am in the Pacific Northwest, and I like having long days in the summer that are usable. I like being able to eat outside, go for walks, do outdoor things in the summer. I found Texas summers to be too hot and the winters too dark in the evenings to enjoy. It was fun biking in Houston at Christmas in shorts and a long sleeve t-shirt, looking at Christmas lights on palm trees. That's exactly what I said. I can't imagine hanging Christmas lights on palm trees. So here's another person that is up for the 4 seasons. To each their own. BCIO says, it really depends on you. I prefer to be as close to the ocean and Gulf as possible. My wife and I have lived within 10 miles of the coast our whole lives, with the exception of 5 years, 20 years ago. We are now 59 and 60. We did not like those 5 years. And we're looking forward to returning to the coast. That being said, of the options that you provided, I would choose the Florida Panhandle. I would also look at the Alabama coast, Gulf Coast, and Galveston. Galveston would be almost between the 2 areas that you referred to. We lived in St. Augustine, Melbourne, and Cocoa in Florida, and really enjoyed it. I think Galveston is actually Texas. So that was in 80s and 90s. It is different place now. East Central Florida is much more crowded than it used to be, and it's harder to get around. Some of the panhandle areas are the same way now. There you go. So some other suggestions for places to visit. Retire and Dream says, wife and I are having the same issue finding a place to settle. She likes warm, sunny weather, white and blue water, and ocean air. We tried San Antonio, then you did Mexico, then north of Florida, and didn't find anything that felt like home. The white sandy beaches near the Panhandle region seem nice, but we did not spend a lot of time there. It seems like anywhere near the coast is a stream area for about 8 months, and now had to come back to Austin. Oh, I don't know what happened here. His comment got cut off. All right, so we're just going to skip that. Maybe he'll come back and give us some additional information. So Manicure says, lifelong San Antonian here. Awesome. Yes, property taxes are higher to make up for the lack of state tax, but there are caps when you turn 65. Yes, summers are intensely hot, but winters are often mild enough for daily outdoor activities. I like to camp and consider summer my non-outdoor season, then do everything else in the fall, winter, or spring. Topography is also varied, and there are so many different things to do here. I have never spent an extensive amount of time in Florida, but I think Texas has it beat. Austin is great, but I think you will get more bang for your buck in or around San Antonio. Downsize is definitely a political landscape, but if you can deal with that frustration, you will be okay. Great. Thank you for your suggestion. I think what she's talking about also is San Antonio summer is our winter. You hibernate in the winter, but then you enjoy the other 3 seasons. So it's your call. My husband is contemplating to retire in Florida, but I still have my doubts. That's from Lena. He still has 6 more years to go, but me, 15 more years towards retirement. Out of the states you mentioned, North Carolina calls my name. Okay. Let's see, calls my attention. We live in New Jersey and definitely not looking forward to retire in the state. I hear you. Welcome, Lena. Thank you. So New Jersey is unfortunately on the list of the top 5 most expensive states in the U.S. But you know what, too? And I think you also said that, too. And to each their own. I have clients that live in New Jersey and they're willing to tolerate the cost of living because they are close to New York City. And they love the idea of being able to do the cultural things that you can only do in New York City. We have Broadway, there's tons of museums, there's lots of concerts, there's always something going on. So all you have to do is hop on the train and head over. So I hear what you're saying, and then people don't want to sacrifice because of the Jersey Shore, of the beaches, and then you can go to the Poconos and go skiing. So for some people, they're willing to accept the fact that it may cost them more to stay in New Jersey. They're just loving the idea of being close to other things, and those things may be more important to them. So those are just some of the other conversations that I've seen. And Lena is also adding to, I love the idea of having a tiny house on the property. I do too. Some of the people are talking about starting out with she shed because, there's regular sheds are typically for guys. And then she sheds are for us ladies. So it's got electricity, can have a couple of rooms. You can start with them. And I've seen some really cool things that people are doing. I love the idea of having a tiny property in my property since we have the space, but my county will never approve it, which is very disappointing. I'm curious what county that you are in, because I think some of the local governments are starting to get more and more open to the idea of doing something like this if you're doing this for a family member. I think that has been the biggest challenge, is if you're building something and you're letting them know that you're doing this for family member and not for investment purposes, they may be more open to the idea. If you have the property, if you have the space, I would love to explore that idea, because, I'm thinking about my own parents too. And a lot of people my age that I know, that I have friends, they are thinking about the same thing. How can they help their parents? And having the ability to have them close is important to a lot of people. So, Lena says that you're in Bergen County. You know what? I'm going to have to look into it a little bit more, because I think that that's going to be more and more coming up as something that people are going to bring up. And I encourage people to bring it up to their local government and to talk to their local social media, so that way the reporters and other influential community members can bring it up, because the change is going to happen on the local level. The federal government has no effect on it, the state a little bit, but it's the local government that has the ability to make these changes to try and resolve some of this housing crisis. So that's kind of what we're thinking. So what questions do you guys have? We had a really cool discussion about Florida and Texas. And please share with me where you are and what are you seeing in your own neighborhoods, in your own community. Interesting. I'm pretty familiar with Florida because of the quite a number of clients that have moved there. And I have clients that live in all parts of Florida. I have quite a few of them that live in Central, which is there, like Orlando, Davenport. Some of them considered going up to the villages, but they haven't. I have clients that live in Jacksonville area. And I also have clients that live in between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. So I've been to all of those parts, but the one part that I have never been to yet that I want to visit, I do have clients that are in the process of actually relocating there, is the Panhandle. So I've never been there. And I'm curious how that differs, because you know what, even with a small state like Florida, things are different where you are in the southern point versus completely, the northern point versus Miami and the Keys. Very different. And Lena, I think you'll agree with me that New Jersey is the same way. North Jersey is very different than Central Jersey and very different than South Jersey. And New Jersey is small. It may take you a couple hours from the northern point to the southern point to cross the state. And across the state, like at the waistline, as we call it, it's 45 minutes from one border to the other, down the shore to the beach line. So very different. So I guess I'm going to have to take some trips and see what's what. So, but yeah, so this is what we have going on this week. The housing market, it just keeps on going. We're going to see where the rates end up again next week. I'm curious to see if, because you know what typically happens because of the election, because it looks good, they are decreasing the rates and they're saying, look, we're actually making changes. We're doing something for the economy. And then election happens and then the new government takes place, which, by the way, if you are kind of starting to hibernate because you want to know what happens with the elections, I encourage you not to do that, because you're not going to see any changes with what the new government is going to implement until probably the summer or fall of next year. It takes time for all of those things to be put in place, for new procedures to come out, for new systems to be put in place. And especially with the housing market is a very, very slow moving elephant, as I call it. It cannot be compared to the stock market. Stock market is like, okay, I woke up, I didn't sleep well, and I need my cup of coffee, but boy, am I going to be moody today. Because as you can see, stock market jumps up and down for every little thing. Housing market, which is what I love about real estate, is not like that. They are slowly moving, and most of the time they're moving forward, which is why it's so important to protect your wealth that you have invested in your home. It is so important because it's a big part of your retirement planning process. You want to preserve it because for a lot of people, it is the only thing that you have if you did not do enough and did not save enough money for your retirement. Either you are planning on it now or you are in the process of preserving what you already have saved because you are already enjoying your golden years. So that's my topics for today. Thank you so much for joining me and contributing. I loved it. Let me know what other thoughts that you have and ideas and think something else to talk about, because there's always something to talk about when we are talking about housing market, planning for retirement, and living well in retirement, which is my passion to talk about just about every day. So thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great rest of your night and a fantastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.